Goedemiddag allemaal bij deze breakout sessie verzorgd door Smart Pensions. De transitie naar DC-regelingen in het nieuwe systeem schept natuurlijk kansen voor buitenlandse uitvoerders die al heel veel ervaring mee hebben. We zagen bijvoorbeeld al eerder Capgemini die de uitvoering van detailhandel is gaan doen. Smart Pensions is ook zo'n buitenlandse partij met veel ervaring met de uitvoering van DC-regelingen in veel landen. En ze willen nu ook in Nederland actief worden. Dus vandaag zijn Dan McLaughlin en Michael Watkins van Smart Pension hier om een presentatie te verzorgen en hierbij te praten over hun ervaringen met het uitvoeren van DC-regelingen in andere Europese landen. Dus daar gaan ze over bijpraten nu. Na afloop hebben we een Q&A-sessie van een aantal minuten, dus daar kunt u vragen kwijt. Als u van het huis kantoren meedoet, dan kunt u dat via de chatbox graag de vraag stellen. En dan alsjeblieft in het Engels. Now we'll switch to English. Welcome Dan. Can I please give the floor to you?
Thank you very much. Hello everybody. Apologies I can't be there in person. That was the plan. We all know why it's not possible, but it would have been too much, I think, COVID testing admin so close to my wedding anniversary this weekend, which would meant I've got to attend this remotely, but we'll be back soon. So my name's Dan McLaughlin, as we said. I'm Director of International here at Smart. I think before I kick off, it'd be nice just for Michael just to do a quick intro as well, because then we'll probably leap into a video just to set a bit of context.
Yeah, so hi everybody. My name is Michael Watkins. I'm Director of Retirement and Member Payments. So I build retirement products here at Smart.
Fantastic, thank you, Michael. So guys, before we kind of leap into this, when we thought about what we might say and what might be helpful to the room virtually and in person, we thought maybe just a few video clips might be helpful just to get a feel for some of the slides and some of the things we'll discuss. So if possible, I think somebody is queued up to play the first video.
Hi there, I'm Seva. I'm here to answer any questions you might have about Smart.
Thanks for that. I think we can switch to the slides if you like now, if that's possible. So I wanted to show that video first because I think it sets a bit of context for some of the slides and brings some of it to life in a short presentation. So my job at Smart is to essentially look at new markets, and we've been rolling out our technology into new markets for a while, and we've been watching the Netherlands and the Pensioenakkoord as it kind of slowly emerged and finally was announced last year. And now we're actively kind of looking at this as a market where our technology provides a good fit and hopefully a helpful contribution to the market. So first up though, just who we are. So Smart we are a very fast growing and large global retirement technology provider. We're in the defined contribution space. That's our specialism. And we can provide, and we do provide and can provide our platform to governments, financial institutions, pension funds, administrators, so they can manage and run their DC pensions business. Now, the slide I'm on at the minute is slide 2 for the attendees. I can't see the slides on my screen, so I don't know if they're on or not. But what you saw on the video is a bit of a summary in this kind of slide. I think on its own it wouldn't have worked quite well without the video. So kind of what we deliver essentially is a cloud-native, up-to-date technology platform in the DC space. So it's, the code was the first time we're 6 years old. So the code is very new. The platform is very new and very modern. And that's the kind of main theme of this breakout session is around the world's shifting to DC. And there's a central role for technology in the success of the whole range of DC reforms we're seeing across the world. And I'll touch on that. I think when you look at that platform, there's lots going on. It looks pretty nice, but I think what's there is masses of efficiency running through there. Obviously, you'd expect straight through processing and automation in a technology platform. And importantly, it's not just a kind of a nice looking front end using traditional language. It's not just a nice looking front end. The platform itself is an end-to-end administration platform as well. So because at the end of the day, we do understand pensions, because quite uniquely, as a bit of further context for Smart, is that in the UK, we actually have our own pension fund, a master trust. And it's quite large in terms of participants, about 800,000 and about 70 to 80,000 employers in there. A master trust in the UK is a vehicle very popular in DC environments where unrelated employers can go into one vehicle with a single board of trustees and oversight and governance. And so that's quite a nice way to cut your teeth, if you like, when you're a technology provider, except your first client is your own pension fund. And so the size of that pension fund and the complexity that it gives is a great way to kind of test and prove the technology. And that links into some other points around the context for a technology company that understands pensions, is around, we can take the innovation risk around pensions. I think we do see in DC markets slowly but surely, maybe pension funds, superannuation funds in Australia, other vehicles in different markets where, they focus on where they add value, and the technology company can concentrate on where they add value. And we're uniquely positioned to have a deep understanding of pensions from our own pension fund and being a technology provider. And so with that, we've got strong regulatory and reg tech expertise in the business. And on the right-hand side of this slide, I think we'll touch on user-centered design later. Innovation, Michael will cover. Technology will cover in the next few slides. And the expertise just builds on that reg tech point around, being able to create retirement solutions in different marketplaces. That's using our global knowledge and experience, and obviously local experts and the great people you can work with locally to deliver that. Next slide, please. This is a bit more on the software as a service that we provide, but just a few call outs, not to go through all this text, we'll pick on other bits, but just a few call outs. I think it's important is around the top left around database. I think what we find in different parts of the world, I think is what we found in the Netherlands as well, is around data and databases and the use of data in pensions. There's always room for improvement, and that's a big emphasis of our platform, is to use data for processing, for administration, for user experience, member engagement, all in real time. And on the bottom left, the platform enhancements and regulatory updates. I think it's important to stress, as a technology company, when you have that flow of releases, it's less of a lumpy experience for clients to use our platform. There's no kind of creeping death at year 3 or year 5 of, we have to jump to version 2 and it's going to be a whole world of pain and cost. It's a slightly smoother medium to long-term relationship that the technology enables, which is quite important, I think, when you're trying to contribute to each other's success. And obviously security, infrastructure security and ongoing management is absolutely key to successful technology platforms, whatever industry we are in. And I think on the next slide, if we can just jump to that, this provides a nice overview of what we've kind of been talking about already. Is around in the middle, the platform is a smart API sitting above the database and other integrations. That enables lots of other things for that data to be not just for the processes and administration to be completed, but portals, front ends to be surfaced, whether that's internal for administration, for the operations staff, or users such as employers, employees, advisors. That's how that they can benefit from a technology platform where the front end and the member engagement portals, et cetera, are woven in. They're not separate things that we'll get to in the end. It's all integrated into one platform. And our platform as well is a global platform. So when we're building something for another market, for example, like the States, we'll look at the kind of value or relevance that might have to another market. And so we will make sure something's built and can be deployed in another market. Another market may or may not need it, or it might have a slight configure, but it's that global platform in mind. And that enables you to be quite a globally efficient business as well from a technology perspective, where you're not servicing separate platforms in different nations 100%. It's a much more efficient way of going about the business. I think interestingly as well, continuous innovation improvement is enabled by a technology platform. And I think that's key in DC markets where we have to think of people as customers and less ID numbers. It's really critical for a successful DC system. And the platform itself, like I say, day one was built in the UK on the back of pension auto-enrollment in the UK. So it's specifically built for workplace, or the second pillar, rather than a wealth. Sometimes you see wealth transformed into or adjusted for second pillar pensions. And we have built this from the ground up purposely for the second pillar. And I think that's an important point. On the next slide, thank you very much. I think it's I just wanted to share kind of part of our journey in terms of where we are in terms of scale, but also what we're seeing in terms of DC reforms around the world. So I think that's interesting to people in the room and at home. The global reforms we're seeing, and if you take the UK as a starting example, auto-enrollment was massive. That was 11 people who were auto-enrolled. Obviously, the Netherlands, Pensioenakkoord, I would consider this the biggest pension reform in the world right now from everything that I see and we're involved in. There's some big things happening around the world, but I definitely think the Netherlands is the biggest reform at the moment. In Australia, you're seeing huge debate at the moment on the retirement income side of things. And that's something Michael will touch on as well in terms of decumulation, often a neglected part of a DC system. The US, you're seeing things similar to the UK Master Trust already introduced, which is pooled employer plans. There's 50, 60 million American workers who don't have access to a retirement plan through their employer. And that's a real kind of crunchy policy issue in the States right now. And that's been addressed in part through pooled employer plans. And that's a really interesting quite interesting development for the US, because we never thought we quite would get there, but it's great that it's been introduced. And then in the rest of the world, DC reforms are relentless. I mean, the Philippines is introducing auto-enrollment for millions of workers. We're seeing reforms across Latin America, potentially Ecuador, for example, introducing auto-enrollment. South Asia, entire countries from scratch, introducing a pension system for the first time, will be a DC system. And China has got the ultimate challenge of introducing a second pillar reform before the kind of first pillar becomes unsustainable. So it's interesting, around the world, you see reforms in DC which are solving the same or similar socio-demographic challenges, but are very similar in shape and size and the challenges that they face in terms of having a successful system. And we've responded to that across the world in terms of a technology company. And I think the stuff I was talking about before enables us to roll out at kind of this pace. We've got a footprint in the UK, as you'd expect, Ireland, the EU, the Middle East, US, out of Nashville, and recently incorporated in Australia. And what we're doing there, numerous clients, for example, the Bank of Ireland through their wholly owned subsidiary, Insurer, is a client, and that was a good early move for us because they're a tier one critical vendor in Ireland under kind of European Central Bank supervision. So it's quite a nice bar to reach and overcome in an early stage of a technology company. And we've got 600 to 700 employees across the world now. So when we're entering a market, we're bringing a lot of scale, a lot of expertise to a market. And I think that's really important in terms of being able to be involved in 4 or 5 markets simultaneously. You need the strength and breadth to be able to do that. And we're lucky enough to have some great investors as well from Legal & General, Barclays, JP Morgan, the Link Group, and recently DWS, Natixis, and Chrysalis, who joined our cap table. So we've got some great investors, which contributes to a great board who's helped steer our growth around the world. And on the next slide, we wanted to, and if onto kind of slide 7, I think it might be, that's the one. We wanted to kind of just talk about user research, user experience, user-centered design, because what we find in DC, I think this is one of the biggest step-ups often when DC systems are introduced, is suddenly, and it's in a mature DC market like Australia, which is the second biggest DC market in the world, they're having to kind of really try to upgrade and change the way they kind of engage with participants. And so it's a big issue now. Lots of different legislative change in Australia, which is causing that. But that's a really interesting part of this. So it's a priority in smart user-centered design. We have a specific unit with people who've been pulled from all different parts of different industries, from Amazon to Tesco to kind of Co-op and the supermarkets and government services. So to form a great team where we do lots of user research around the world to ensure what we release is works in a way that humans actually work and behave and like to use things, rather than a system-driven solution, which sometimes can feel slightly difficult to use if you're an individual user, an employer, an employee, or whoever. But Michael will probably dig into this a little bit further, and it delivers, better and easier member engagement, participant engagement, so they can use, access, see their pension savings and make decisions that they are able to on their phone or tablet, or you saw Saver, you'll be able to speak to artificial intelligence or a digital human to discuss your pension or make the odd change, whichever's possible in a given market. And I think those points are kind of all relevant. I think they're all relevant generally in DC. I think they're very relevant for the Pensioenakkoord and some of the challenges that the market we're facing right now. I think from a technology standpoint, it needs to be future-proof from a regulatory and technology perspective. I think things like fees are not particularly top of the agenda, I don't think, right now in the Netherlands, apart from obviously the introduction around Capgemini and other providers looking at participant fees per year, maybe being slightly lower than traditionally seen. Because I think what you see in DC systems is fees becomes a priority for regulators down the track at different times of their journey, and that's the important role of technology to enable pension funds and others to deliver their pensions to their participants over a given period, have partners who can work with them over the medium to long term, and then regulators and policymakers in government are able to deliver their policies, etc., without any kind of technology barriers. And I think the Pensioenakkoord is in the same basket as many of the other countries. And I think at this point I will stop talking and hand over to Michael, I think.
Thanks, Dan. If we could just flick on a couple of slides. So I'm going to talk about innovation, and I think one of the things that we need to address first and foremost is that innovation can often be hampered by regulation and policy, not intentionally. Quite often regulators are looking to protect consumers, but they miss the underlying principle of innovation, which is how do we solve customer problems? And one of the things that we do at Smart is always make sure that we put the customer at the heart of everything that we do. So we obviously want to operate within regulatory frameworks. That's our job. But we want to build products that solve customer problems. So if you flick onto the next slide. So we have recently commissioned a report. We've called it the Future of Global Retirement Report, and we've conducted this in a number of countries, of which the Netherlands is one. Some of the key findings that we found are that people are looking for flexibility in their retirement, and they are also looking for control. So, I mean, these are obvious points in your life. You expect to have flexibility and control over whether it be your working environment or the products or services that you use. But traditionally, there's a lot of complexity around retirement, which means that it's quite often abstract. So that sense of control can come out of the fact that people feel like the retirement system is quite difficult for them to understand. So on the right-hand side, you'll see that some of the other key points that people are looking for are a consistent experience. So in today's world, everything that we do, or pretty much everything we do, is digital. Why would you not expect exactly the same thing if you're retiring? People don't see retirement as a one-off event. The way that people work today and retire today is changing. People transitioning into retirement rather than that sort of golden handshake that they used to receive. And then finally, advice is something that is very important, but can be delivered in lots of different ways. So people are looking for guidance and advice, or guidance or advice. And it's really important that we can deliver that at scale, which is where guidance comes in. Guidance is a really good way of delivering key information, helping people understand the choices that they have without having to go through what they quite often see as a rigorous process that isn't necessarily right for them. If we skip on to the next slide. Thank you. So what does this mean in terms of what we need to achieve? So as I mentioned, we want a digital first solution. It's the way that the world engages with products today. I think a key point is that we need to focus on outcomes rather than products explicitly. So the way that I would look at things are that regulation can be a product, right? Regulation is trying to solve a problem, and ultimately technology can solve a problem, but what we want to do is help people achieve positive outcomes. So by focusing on those outcomes and developing products that facilitate those, we are going to innovate and ultimately solve customer problems. As I mentioned before, guidance is a really important way to engage with people and help them understand how they might make the most of their retirement. So a really key point is that advice currently isn't scalable. It isn't something that people necessarily feel that they need. And therefore, the importance of guidance is very clear. In terms of planning for retirement, it needs to be the whole breadth of your assets and your wealth and your financial position. Key point here is that your retirement provision isn't likely going to be purely through your pension provision. It's going to be other assets that you have, as well as your house and savings, etc. And then there's more that we can do. So as I said, we need to solve customer problems, but we need to do it in a very simple way. So we don't want to over complicate things for people by giving them tons of information, which kind of creates another problem for them. So how can we use the services that exist and the infrastructure that exists with things like open banking to produce clear user journeys that solve clear problems? If we flick onto the next slide. Thank you. So this is how we're solving this at Smart. So we have built a product called Smart Retire, and simply put, what we've done is try to take all of the complexity away from the user when they come to retirement. So how do we focus on outcomes? We make it outcome specific, whether it be income, savings, taking a lump sum. Really key point is, people want to take lump sums because it gives them that sense of confidence and ownership in their retirement. Quite often, obviously, it sits with a provider and then subsequently moves across into their bank account. So how do we give them that sense of ownership without them wanting to, without them feeling like they don't have control of their retirement provision? It needs to be personalized. So people need to feel like the product is fit for them, and without a personalized approach. And that doesn't just mean the language that you use. It also means building journeys that are bespoke to those individuals, that can be configured to those individuals, is a really important thing, because it means that it's helping them understand what works for them rather than a one-size-fits-all solution. And the other points I've kind of touched on: it needs to be configurable, it needs to be digital, and it ultimately needs to be flexible. That's the world that we live in and what we expect as people. If we could flick onto the next slide. So the final point I'll make, and sort of just to outline that point around the importance of personalization, one of the things that we found through the research that we've done is there are these behavioral practices that we call. So effectively what we have here are different levels of financial literacy and personas or profile types that exist within those levels of financial literacy. So on the inner ring, you have somebody which we term a knowledge maker. So many of the people who will be attending this conference will probably successfully be able to navigate financial products and do so in a way that leads to a good outcome for them, but they are the minority. You then have the knowledge checker. So this will be somebody who refers to a family member, an advisor, potentially their partner, to see if they're making the right decision about their retirement. You then have the follower. So this is a person who doesn't know what's best to do, but they know somebody who's taken an action or done something similar before, and they want to do what they've done. And it may lead to a bad outcome because it isn't necessarily right for them. And then finally, you have the person who has nobody to follow. And these are quite common when it comes to retirement. So they will quite heavily rely on things like Google. They will look for the top 5 search items and pick one of those as their retirement product. And you can see how that, with paid ads, etc., can be a potentially detrimental thing to their retirement. So I'll just leave you on a short video just showing our product, and then we'll pause for any questions. If you could play the video.
Okay, I think we've come to the end of the presentation. So if there are any questions for the speakers, please feel free to ask. Yeah, André.
André de Vos, Pensioenpro. I was wondering, where does the human advice come in? We recently had a discussion in the Netherlands about the use of all these smart apps, financial planning software. And the conclusion was, in the end, people always want to have a human advisor to just make sure they're going to make the right decision. What's your view on that?
I think there is definitely a need for advice. I think it just comes in many forms. So you can look at that through a couple of different lenses. One is, yes, full financial advice is incredibly helpful to people in making sure that they're making good decisions. But quite often they look for informal advice in terms of friends, family, colleagues. So I think there's definitely a role to be played. But I think we need to look at scalable ways to deliver it.
Yes, because well, I was wondering, but there's a discussion in the Netherlands where the pension funds are actually, who's going to give this advice? Because there's a discussion in the Netherlands where the pension funds are allowed to give this advice. They can advise about their own contract, but they find it difficult to use other financial information like savings of people where they have an own house, etc., etc. Also, the regulation is not quite clear about this, what they actually can do. Well, maybe your view on this.
Yeah, so there's a good example of how this is playing out in the UK. So there is a government body that's being pushed to retirees where they should go and seek guidance on their retirement options. And as I sort of said at the beginning, I think policy can sometimes reduce the impact of innovation or stop the impact of innovation. So I think centralized bodies would be good because it stops the conflicts of people selling their products to their members. It also sort of solves the issue of the breadth of advice that they might need. As you said, are pension funds best placed to give advice on other assets? Probably not. So I think a centralized entity is probably the best way to go if there isn't the right level of innovation in the market from advice providers.
Okay. Any more questions from the audience? No? Then I have a couple, if I may. Actually, your pension, I've never come across a pension solution that's so customer friendly as yours. I haven't seen this in the Netherlands. As an individual pension saver, you have a lot of options you can choose from. But this also prompts the question whether your software, your solutions are also suitable for pension plans with more of a collective solidarity elements with less freedom of choice for individual members.
Yes, I think the easiest way to answer that is that we, as I said, try to solve the customer problem, which is breaking things down into the simplest forms so they understand the decisions they're taking. we can handle all types of complexity underneath that. The end user doesn't need to see that, but we can deliver in a way that helps them understand. So short answer is yes, we can manage that capability.
So you can offer bespoke solutions to pension plans.
Exactly right. Yeah.
I have one more question from André de Vos, who just also asked the first question. We just had a presentation from the Dutch regulator about, and she also talked about the cumbersome quality of data pension funds have. And well, with the transition, it means the legacy data will have to be transferred from the current, often very tricky, cumbersome systems to new DC-based systems. So are you confident you can handle this transition?
Yeah, so we have tons of experience in terms of data migration, but I think a key point is if you put control into your members' hands, it enables them to make sure that their data stays up to date fairly simply, rather than relying on either a central entity or just sort of ad hoc updates. So if you can update your details in the palm of your hand, then you're probably more inclined to do so, and also you can be nudged to do so as well. So in terms of handling backdated migrations, yes, we can do that. And we obviously also have a platform and technology that can enable people to do it in real time as well.
Mm-hmm. Just to add to that, sorry, I think Michael, in our own master trust, I guess in the UK is a nice example. Michael mentioned we subsumed and acquired other pension funds into that master trust, so the data migration points there. I think there is a challenge for the industry. It's a key point, isn't it? It doesn't exist in all parts of the world around stage zero almost of looking at your own data quality and cleansing and having it ready for migration. I think what's a good example in terms of modern technology solutions are when the data's in there, then it remains of high quality and utmost importance to a platform. So it's not an afterthought. On one of the slides earlier, I referred to kind of data being kind of a secondary thought. And I think from our perspective anyway, and I guess other modern technology providers in different sectors and industries around the world, they have the same approach, because data through the API is where all the magic happens, and so it has to be first and foremost an absolute priority. But I think it's going to be a challenge for not just the Netherlands, but other areas of the world where you're seeing big consolidation or pension reform, like in Australia, where data moves from A to B, and there's usually millions and millions of records and billions and billions of assets as well related to it. So I think there's a first step, which is to ready that data for a migration, and I guess we can only do that once the secondary and detailed legislation is fully known and published next year.
Okay, thank you. Maybe one last question. You mentioned yourself Capgemini entering the Dutch market, and also their €15 per member proposition. Can you match this, why or why not? Is it possible? €15.
Well, I can't speak on behalf of anybody else, but I can speak from a position where we are at Smart, where we know from as a technology provider involved in pensions, that the cost to serve at an individual participant level is much lower than traditionally you would see. And I say much lower, I mean quite a lot lower. And if you take some of our clients and partners around the world where they might have had a given process, let's just say gathering contributions and trade instructions, and then executing on trades at kind of tens of thousands of participants and quite a few thousand euros, etc., millions of euros. They may have had 20 to 30 people on that process, and it may have taken a few days. Now, on our platform, typically you'd have no people in that process, and so you can see where some of the efficiencies and cost to serve can come through from modern technology. So I think it is achievable. I guess it depends on the complexity of a pension fund, or the rules and the benefit entitlements and the number of moving parts. But if you take a step back and kind of all things being equal, from a technology standpoint, it should be achievable. Whether 15 is the number, whether it's 25 or whether it's 30, I don't know. If somebody does know out there, please tell me. But it's definitely traditionally a lot lower than I would have seen in the Netherlands under the current system.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, maybe one last question. Are you also planning to open an office in the Netherlands? And when would that be?
So, yeah, absolutely. So, sorry, Michael, I thought you were talking then. But yeah, absolutely. Our kind of business model is to have a local presence, employ local people, local experts. We do that in, obviously, UK is a bit different because we're already in the UK, but Ireland, the US in Nashville, we're up to 40 plus people. That'll be up to 70. CEO-led local president who used to run one of the biggest asset managers in Europe. And similar in the Middle East. Other parts of the world I'm not allowed to mention, but quite exciting stuff in Australia as well. The Netherlands will be no exception. In fact, it'd be more the kind of model that we deploy in the US and Australia, where we would have a senior team, country manager, MD, whatever you want to call it, and a senior local team with experts on the ground running the business from the Netherlands. So not running it from the UK or anything like that. The business in the Netherlands, like other areas, will be able to benefit from our global resources and expertise. So we're looking at 600-700 people. They'll be able to benefit from that and the hundreds of software engineers we have. But very much critically important that two things: local presence and a significant local presence in the Netherlands, and data obviously being held in the Netherlands as well.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dan, Michael, for your presentation. We come to the end of this session, so I'll switch back to Dutch. So thanks again for your time here.
Thank you very much.